Every refugee story is tragic, but some are also transformative. China's expelled millions didn't just survive, they built one of the most powerful economic empires in history. Today, 70% of Southeast Asia's billionaires are ethnic Chinese. The people China pushed out in the 1800s and 1900s didn't merely flee, they laid the foundations of what would become a $2 trillion invisible empire. China lost millions, but gained something far more powerful: economic influence without armies. In Indonesia, ethnic Chinese are barely 3% of the population, yet control 70% of private wealth. In Thailand, they own the banks and conglomerates. In Malaysia, the richest families are Chinese. How did refugees, many with nothing, become the unseen rulers of Southeast Asia? This is the story of the Bamboo Network, Asia's most secretive business ecosystem, and China's greatest export, its people. To understand it, you first need to understand why millions of Chinese left in the first place. This wasn't voluntary migration chasing opportunity. It was survival, often literal. For centuries, China had policies designed to trap its people. The sea ban began in the Ming dynasty and continued under the Qing. Leaving the empire was illegal, punishable by imprisonment, public shaming, or execution. The rulers feared that migration meant foreign influence, social instability, and weakened imperial control. Yet desperate people always find a way. Farmers, laborers, artisans, even criminals risked everything. They braved stormy seas, starvation, and certain death, heading to Southeast Asia, where Chinese merchants had traded for centuries. But these weren't merchants with wealth or influence. They were refugees with nothing. Then came China's century of humiliation. From 1839 to 1949, China was besieged by foreign powers and internal collapse. The Opium Wars humiliated the Qing dynasty. Britain seized Hong Kong, France colonized Vietnam, Japan invaded and committed atrocities that scarred generations. Civil war, famine, and economic collapse forced millions to flee. Those who left were often poor farmers, coolies, miners, and day laborers. They arrived in Southeast Asia with nothing but resilience and a willingness to work harder than anyone else. They dug tin mines in Malaysia, cut rubber on Indonesian plantations, built roads and railways across Thailand. The locals often distrusted them, colonial governments exploited them, yet they survived and slowly began building networks. When Mao Zedong and the Communist Party took over in 1949, overseas Chinese were condemned as traitors and capitalist enemies. Families with relatives abroad faced imprisonment, torture, and death during the Cultural Revolution. China expelled millions, and those millions never forgot. Hunger, humiliation, and abandonment forged them into something stronger and more determined. They built networks rooted in blood and trust, helping each other survive because no one else would. And they became brilliant, ruthless business people. China thought it was solving a problem. Instead, it was creating a rival empire. By pushing its people out, China inadvertently seeded an economic diaspora that would become wealthier and more influential than most nations. These refugees didn't just survive, they dominated, quietly building the Bamboo Network, stretching from Singapore to Jakarta, Bangkok to Manila. Unlike Western corporations with boards, shareholders, and contracts, the Bamboo Network runs on family, relationships, and trust, guanxi. Your word is your bond. Break it, and you're out. In this network, trust is survival, business is survival, and family is everything. They employed each other, lent to each other, and sold to each other, creating a self-contained economic ecosystem inside the official economy, devastatingly effective. In Indonesia, Liam Sio Leong arrived in 1938 with nothing. By the 1990s, his group controlled cement, food, and banking. Achipta Wijaya's Sonar Mas Group dominates palm oil, real estate, and finance. Today, ethnic Chinese, only 3% of Indonesia, control 70% of private wealth. In Thailand, Charan Pokphand started as a seed shop. The CP Group now owns 7-Eleven operations in 20 countries, controls retail, malls, luxury brands, and almost every major business family traces ancestry back to China. Malaysia's Robert Kwok, the Sugar King, expanded into property, hotels, and banking. Singapore's economy was built almost entirely by ethnic Chinese, from banks to shipping companies. Across Southeast Asia, ethnic Chinese make up 5 to 10% of the population, yet control 70 to 80% of private wealth, a total exceeding $2 trillion. How did they achieve this? First, they worked harder than anyone. Second, they helped each other. Third, they were patient, building family businesses to last generations. They remained invisible while governments focused elsewhere. By the time anyone realized, the Chinese already owned the economy. China didn't anticipate the return. For decades, the diaspora spoke Chinese at home, maintained culture, sent remittances, and stayed connected. In the 1980s, Deng Xiaoping opened China's economy and recognized the wealth and influence of overseas Chinese. They poured billions into China, became primary drivers of the economic miracle, and connected the country to global markets. In 2013, the Belt and Road Initiative extended this influence further. Chinese state enterprises funded projects across Asia, Africa, and Europe, but diaspora companies often executed them, leveraging deep networks and trust in host countries. This created influence without armies, control without overt colonization. But the Bamboo Network's power is more than money. The United Front Work Department, a branch of the Chinese Communist Party, ensures overseas Chinese remember their roots and contribute to the motherland. Some diaspora business people act as unofficial ambassadors, promoting Chinese interests abroad. Some host countries fear this influence, enacting foreign interference laws. Southeast Asian nations rely on Chinese money, but worry about its political consequences. Indonesia experienced violent backlash in 1998 when riots targeted Chinese businesses. Malaysia implements affirmative action policies to limit Chinese economic dominance. Singapore balances Chinese influence while maintaining political neutrality. Generational change challenges the network. Founders who remembered poverty and persecution built tight networks and worked 16-hour days to survive. Their grandchildren, born in Bangkok, Jakarta, Kuala Lumpur, or Singapore, often see themselves as global citizens, attend elite international schools, and may not speak Chinese. Some reject family businesses entirely, choosing careers in art, tech, or finance. The network's cohesion is at risk. US-China rivalry compounds this. Overseas Chinese face suspicion in the West, often assumed loyal to Beijing. China pressures them to support the motherland. Many businesses straddle both worlds, dependent on China and Western markets, caught between competing powers. At its core, the story raises deeper questions. Who are the overseas Chinese? Are they Chinese living abroad, Southeast Asians with Chinese ancestry, or something else entirely? Do they owe loyalty to the land they fled, or the land where they were born but never fully accepted? These questions mirror other diasporas, like the Jewish diaspora, which created networks, faced suspicion, and forged complex transnational identities. Perhaps the future of the Bamboo Network lies not in one country but everywhere, wielding influence across borders without allegiance to any single state. The Bamboo Network transformed Southeast Asia, rebuilt China, and generated trillions in wealth. Yet its survival in the 21st century is uncertain. Generational change, geopolitical rivalry, and questions of identity threaten cohesion. China expelled millions in the 19th and 20th centuries. Those people arrived in Southeast Asia as refugees, poor and unwanted, worked harder than anyone else, built trust-based networks, and became the richest people in the region. Ethnic Chinese now control 70 to 80% of private wealth across Southeast Asia, despite being 5 to 10% of the population. China realized in the 1980s it needed these people, inviting investment that fueled the country's economic miracle. Today, China leverages the Bamboo Network for soft power, using diaspora wealth and relationships to influence Southeast Asia. Is this strategy smart governance or invisible colonialism? Is it economic development or foreign control? There are no clear heroes or villains, just people who survived, adapted, and created something extraordinary. Geography does not determine power, networks do. China expelled its people but became dependent on them. Soft power is no longer armies, it's money and influence. To understand modern China, the Belt and Road Initiative, or Southeast Asia's economic landscape, you must understand the bamboo network. Its legacy is profound, but its future uncertain. Generational change and global tensions test its resilience. Millions of overseas Chinese still ask themselves, where do I belong? China closed its doors, its people left through the cracks, and they built an empire China could never fully control. Expelled as refugees, they returned as billionaires, proving you can exile people, but not their power. The bamboo network is China's greatest export, yet it may answer to no one, loyal only to survival, influence, and the networks forged over generations. It is a story of resilience, strategy, identity, and power. It's the story of millions who left, adapted, and created wealth invisible yet undeniable. It challenges our understanding of economics, geopolitics, and the human spirit. It is a lesson in how the expelled can shape empires quietly, relentlessly, and with lasting consequences.